the meeting of the Community Services and Land Use Committee, June 12th. Can everyone hear me, please? Well, good. We're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will have the agenda and the minutes. I would like to remind everyone to please turn off your phones. Take a minute to do that. Everyone, including me. All right. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Brock, was public notice done of this meeting in accordance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilman Dawson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
And Councilman Tabernet seconds the motion. In our packet was the minutes from April 10th. I hope everyone reviewed it. Any comments, additions, deletions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt those minutes.
So moved.
I
I'll
have-
second that.
I have a motion by Chairman Passman and a second by Councilman Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, here we are for citizens' comments. We have a long list of people. As you know, we only have 3 minutes per person. I'd like to remind everyone that the public will be recognized to speak for 3 minutes in the following protocol. Address the chairman, and in speaking, avoid disrespect to council and any personalities. Please confine yourself to questions under the jurisdiction of the council, which is on the sign-up sheet. Be mindful and respect of those who are present and others who may be watching on TV. I would also like to remind everyone, I was at the Planning Commission meeting last week. If you disagree with whoever's making public comment, please refrain from making any sounds or other things, like you can clap after they're done if you want to, but during their talk, if you could please refrain from making any comments, because we are recording these meetings and it does interfere with the recording. So I have 5 people. I have more than 5 people. I'm going to read the first 5, and if there's anyone on this list, they're all for item number 14 on the agenda. And of these people, I would like to ask if anyone of them is of a different view, that we'd like to hear at least 2 sides to number 14. So I'm going to ask each person if they are for or against the item on the agenda number 14. Ty O'Farrell, pro or con? Not yet, just pro or con? Against or for? Okay, Daryl Orage, like, against?
For extraction.
Sorry?
Pro extraction.
Pro,
He's for Pine Island.
okay, all right, so that's another view. Okay, Willie Terrell?
Four.
Okay, all right, so we have different views, that's good. And then we have William Cook, is that right? Okay, and then Arnold Brown. So those will be the 5 people who will be, no, that's 6. Arnold Brown, it was crossed out and then put back on the list, so, but you are still on the list, okay? All right, so we will start with Ty O'Farrell, and you have 3 minutes. Please come forward and state your address and your name for the record, and then,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
My name's Ty O'Farrell. I live at 112 Caper Street. I own a farm on Tom Fripp, which is probably the last farm you get to before you hit Pine Island. I want to tell everybody here a story. The year was 1947, and there was a young boy up from upstate New York that decided that his parents wanted to move down to Florida to start a farm. They were sick of how cold it was. They were dairy farmers in upstate New York in 1947. Freezing, miserable. So they packed up the family, his brother and him, and the dad and the mom, and they headed south to Florida. They stopped in Yamasee, South Carolina, and High Sheriff McTeer of the Low Country stopped them and said, y'all aren't from around here. What are y'all doing? And the dad said, well, you know what? We're going to Florida. We're going to farm. Mr. McTeer said, nah, you don't need to go to Florida. Hop in my patrol car. So the husband and the son hopped in the patrol car. The mom and the brother stayed put, and he took them out to St. Helena Island. The dad decided that he fell in love with the property, and that's what we know as Henry Farms today. Henry Farms has been there forever. I want to fast forward to probably 1999. I'm from Beaufort. I grew up on Ladies Island, but then when I was probably 12 years old, my family moved to Fripp Point. Fripp Point is on the opposite side. We looked at Pine Island to the left, Edisto Island to the right, and Monkey Island far away. As an 11-year-old boy, while my parents were at work, we would get dropped off by the bus down a dirt road, and me and my brother would walk down Fripp Point, go down to our dock, and we had a 17-foot mock tall whaler. Didn't have driver's licenses, but we had a 17-foot whaler, and we explored everything. We went on Monkey Island when you weren't supposed to. We've been all throughout Pine Island. I know those waterways better than anybody. Fast forward probably another 10 years later, I fell in love with the girl that had Henry Farms. I married Lucia Henry of Henry Farms. And so it's a small world. So we know St. Helena probably better than anybody. I've gone to elementary school at Ladies Island Elementary. I went to Ladies Island Middle School, and I went to Beaufort High. My wife went to Beaufort Academy. So we are a huge mix of people from Beaufort. And everybody that I've talked to that does not have an agenda that truly feels right, and like honestly, if somebody developed it, my property values would skyrocket. They would absolutely skyrocket. So, but I don't want it. The CPO is for a reason. It's been there. We support it. The farmers support it. I've talked to so many different people. I was told that some people have been contacting y'all, and when I actually called people that I knew, they said that doesn't sound right unless they're actually getting something out of it. So that's for y'all to decide the truth. But I just want to say I appreciate y'all very much. I've talked to a lot of y'all. I've called people from Sun City that know y'all, respect y'all, and I remember talking to you outside my office at Farm Bureau Insurance. So I hope y'all do the right thing, and the people, I feel like, have spoken. Thank you.
Okay, next on our list is Daryl O-R-A-G-E.
Orage.
Orage. Okay.
Darrell Orage, P.O. Box 134, St. Helena Island. So, gentleman, you mentioned he's a farmer, or has been a farmer. I'm a farmer myself. I have also been a commercial crabber, and I'm a recreational fisherman still today. I am here not because I want to be here, but I think it's necessary that I speak. Heretofore, I think the information that we have been receiving has been very one-sided. So, I've studied information systems and mathematics throughout my life, and one of the early concepts that you're introduced to is called GIGO. And I want to say what the acronym stands for. Garbage in, garbage out. Queen Quet, who's also studied similar subjects. Garbage in, garbage out. My point is, much of the information that has been put into the public sphere has been very one-sided. It's been made very simplistic by paternalistic organizations. It's been very simplistic to say that no gates, no Gulf. No gates, no Gulf. I don't want gates, no Gulf either. If it's that simple, I would say no gates, no Gulf. But when in reality, it's not. When we look at what really we're faced with a choice that should be made through informed information, full disclosure of information, which we have not been getting. So if you ask me if I would rather see a golf course with maybe 50 to 60 homes and one dock, or on the other hand, 166 homes, 90 docks, I have a choice to make. I think my folks here who are looking at me oddly and thinking that I'm speaking kind of crazy, there's a choice to be made. What would you rather have? You rather have that golf course or 166 new homes, how many ever new residents that are going to be voting, not necessarily with you? What choice do you actually make?
Sir, could you please refrain from clapping? Thank you.
So I again say that with more information in hand, we have to make an informed decision. My decision after weighing both sides is to say I am in favor of the extraction of Pine Island from the current zoning district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next is Queen Quet.
Good evening, all. I'm the Queen Quet, head from the body of the Gullah Geechee Nation. And this evening, I'm not only presenting on behalf of the Gullah Geechee Nation, but the Gullah Geechee Fishing Association, the Gullah Geechee Sustainability Think Tank, and the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition, which I'm a founder of. Now, I crack my teeth like it is plenty of time when I come 400 children, because we have to remember what is your district for. Gullah Geechee. We been ya, we in the grind, and we're tall. So, I'll speak this way because I want it clear on your record that the point of what we're here tonight for, what I read, is whether or not we are for denial of 3 6-hole golf courses on Pine Island, and whether we are here for a choice about whether or not to change a portion of what is under the Cultural Protection Overlay District, which that property is Pine Island and St. Helena Ville. I am here to state very clearly that we are calling on you to uphold the same vote that took place last Monday night by the Beaufort County Planning Commission, and to uphold what our planners of the county put forth, because it is very clear that we do not want spot zoning to take place in Beaufort County. We do not want the voice of the people, which is embodied in our 2040 comprehensive plan, to be denied simply to uphold and appeal for something that we've already gone through this process since December of last year up to this moment, where the people have spoken at rallies, they've spoken at subcommittee meetings, they've spoken at the full council meetings, they've spoken in every way possible and written many letters. I presented to you 12,000 plus signatures of people in opposition to anything that is going to change the letter, the intent, the heart of the law of the Cultural Protection Overlay District. It is not as simplistic as was just stated prior to me getting up here. It is a lot more complicated to that, and the reason we have the Cultural Protection Overlay District is to protect the cultural heritage, and the things that do not do it are what you are here being asked to talk about tonight. And I sent you a letter already that's 4 pages long. I hope all of you have read it, that points out again and isolates the words from our planning director, that makes it very clear why this is incompatible uses for St. Helena Island because of the Cultural Protection Overlay District. So I hope that you would vote in favor of denying the zoning request change and also denying the 3 6-hole golf courses. So I hope that Hana Yeti me and Yeti the people, because we've been a crack, we teach to say this show all this your time. Thank you, one more again.
Thank you. Okay, Willie Terrell, please come forward and state your name and your address.
Willie Terrell, 114 Folly Road. So I'm not for or against Pine Island. Actually, there might be an argument that I'm against Pine Island. Initially hearing this, a golf course or a gated community on St. Helena, no. Easily no. I don't think I've talked to anybody initially who said we want a golf course or a gated community on St. Helena. But again, I don't think it's that simple. It's an either or proposition. Now, if you talk about not wanting a golf course or a gated community, it goes deeper than that. It's also mindset. I don't want people on the island who don't care about the culture of the island. I don't want people on the island who have a mindset that whatever they buy, whatever they touch, they can change. Some people may think LVO is that same type of person. There's a lot of people coming out against that. So why am I for? Well, it's a guarantee. However that golf course span or whatever area that covers, that guarantees me there's not a home there. There's not a dock there. There's not a person that's going to vote there. It's a guarantee of less of what's the problem. Inward migration. I keep hearing protect the culture. I'm a 5-year teacher at St. Helena Elementary School. I was born on St. Helena Island. I'm not a been year. I'm not a come year. I'm a born year. I heard somebody get up and say, everybody's promised. I got nothing to gain except that my kids that I wake up to, when I'm trying to cut a piece of island out for them, I want to make sure they got a piece of island to go to. 100 more people with the type of buying power to change the landscape of the island, or the type of culture or politics to change the landscape of the island is not favorable to me. So I'm for the island, and for those reasons, I'd rather have a golf course than 100 new residents. So I'm voting, please let them out and not force the development. Now, for those who think, or who I've never been to Pine Island before, until I went to Pine Island. To those who think it cannot be developed, that's ludicrous. And as a realtor, for those who think people won't buy a waterfront property in a dock, that's crazy. So if it's not 166 with 100, 99 more LVOs when one's a problem, it was a clear choice for me. That's all I'm saying. My name's Willie Terrell. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay, the last person on our list is William Cook, right? If you'll give your address.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman, and members of the council. My name is William Cook. I am a resident of 34A, Mobley Oaks Lane in Okatee. And I am also from Beaufort County and grew up here and have spent most of my life here. The issue is, I have to say, the issue here is not whether someone likes the rezoning proposal or doesn't like it. This is a legal issue coming before this council. The proposed rezoning would amount to illegal spot zoning. You've heard this legal term before. I used to be a property law professor and a constitutional law professor, and the test is really simple in South Carolina. It means that you have a spot on a zoning map that's totally inconsistent with the existing zoning to the benefit of one and to the detriment of surrounding property owners in a way that's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. The proposed rezoning satisfies every single element of this test. I submitted written comments earlier today outlining citations to South Carolina Supreme Court authority that make this absolutely clear. And for these reasons, I ask that you recommend denial of the proposed rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, moving on with our agenda. Number 7 is presentation on BEAD and broadband equity. Chadwick, thank you. Federal Program Officer, South Carolina National Telecommunications and Information Administration.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and members of the council. Thank you for having me. I'm also a Beaufort County resident. I live in Okatee, South Carolina. Wanted to talk to you today about the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment program that the Department of Commerce will be announcing at the end of this month. Basically, what it's going to do is to bridge the digital divide for South Carolina. It's going to continue to create processes and build out additional broadband to each home in South Carolina. I'm joined virtually today by Mr. Cedric Kitt, who is the broadband director of the state of South Carolina. Cedric, I don't know if you're on Zoom. If you are, say hello.
Hello.
The voice from above. Cedric works for the state of South Carolina in the Office of Regulatory Staff. They're charged with building out broadband today, and I just wanted Cedric to speak briefly about the work that's already going on in South Carolina through ARPA, CPF, et cetera. Cedric, you want to give a quick overview of that, and then I'll hop right into BEAD.
Yeah, just really quick. Last May, it was announced that the American Rescue Plan Act was going to be signed into law. The Department of Transportation, the Office of Regulatory Staff, and Rural Infrastructure Authority all received money, federal dollars, to go towards expanding infrastructure in South Carolina. In particular, our office was tasked with expanding broadband technology. So with that passing of that law, what we had to do was roll out a competitive grant program where we were to focus on K-12 students, areas with high K-12 students, difficult development areas, and areas that did not have any internet service providers. And through different rounds, we're actually awarding to internet service providers in South Carolina money to build across the whole state of South Carolina. So over the next really 24 months, you'll see a lot of work happening in this state where companies that you're familiar with, the Hargraves of the world, or the Comcast, I believe it's down in Beaufort. These type companies will be building infrastructure so that anybody who wants access to high-speed internet will have it. It does take time to build to these areas, though, which is why what Mr. Chadwick is going to talk about is very important, because what we have is not enough money to hit every home or give people access who wants it in South Carolina. But we got to start building somewhere, and where we end up, he'll come in and he'll be guys to finish up what we need to in South Carolina. So just a quick snapshot of where we are, and now I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Chadwick.
Thank you, Cedric. Great to hear from you. Just a pat on Cedric's back and his team there in Columbia. South Carolina went from 31st in broadband services to number 6 in the nation over the last couple of years. So it's not often we're top 10 in something, so it's something to be very, very proud of. As Cedric mentioned, there are additional programs that are coming, and the BEAD program is the largest one that will be announced at the end of this month. This is an extension of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act that was passed a couple of years ago. The overall goals of this program are to get to unserved homes, underserved homes, so those homes who have slow internet. If you've got DSL or your speeds are below 25.3, you're going to get fiber. You're going to get something to improve that. And then to improve access at community anchor institutions, so schools, municipal buildings, parks, things like that, where we will have fiber for citizens to use on a regular basis. That's the access piece, getting to unserved and served. We want to make it affordable. If you're giving a family a choice between feeding your children or having internet, that's not a choice. That's a false choice. So there's additional money coming to help in affordability of those programs. And then we want to build out adoption. So the worst thing that we could do is build a high-speed superhighway and then people don't know how to use it. They can't afford to use it or they don't know how to use it. So what's the amount of money that's coming? We don't know yet. We'll know in a couple of weeks, but it's on the magnitude of an additional $500 million for the state of South Carolina, which will be deployed over the next 4 years, bringing broadband across the state. At the end of that 4 years, we will have coverage virtually to every home, if not every home. The timeline, though, as Cedric mentioned, it does take time to build. South Carolina is currently in the progress right now of drafting a 5-year strategic plan, which they will submit on August 28th. They will then do an initial proposal to my department by the end of this year, and then sometime in '24, the first 20% of whatever that allocation is will come due. So roughly $125 million will come due. After a year, they'll submit another proposal saying what they've done, and then the rest of that money comes due. So there will be a tremendous amount of money flowing into Beaufort County and the other 45 counties in South Carolina. It is a very good thing. I wanted to come in and share that good news with you. If we can be of additional assistance for you and your constituents, if you live in a part of the county that is unserved or underserved, please reach out to us. Let us know. We'll take a look and we'll work with the ISPs here in Beaufort County to get that fixed. But Madam Chairman, I want to thank you for your time, and if I can answer any questions, I'm happy to do so.
Yes.
Thank you for that. When you deliver this service to the doorstep of a house, will there be any money available in this program so that once the service is in the house, the homeowner will have the ability, if they can't pay for it because of a low income, will you be providing any assistance to allow them to have an internet service provider funded in the house? And what about equipment?
Yeah, there are a variety of programs through the digital equity side of this that will provide for both equipment and for services. Right now, the FCC has an affordable connectivity program where low-income people can get $30 in credit towards internet service. Each of these new programs are working with the ISPs to make sure that they have an internet program around $30. So it's a net wash.
Okay.
And then for services or
Equipment.
devices or tablets,
Right.
absolutely. That's part of the digital
Okay.
equity plan that we're working on, partnering with companies or nonprofits like Laptops for the People, so that if you don't have income sufficient to provide for yourself, there'll be equipment available to you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yes, sir. You had a question?
Yes, Madam
Yes, go
Chairman.
ahead.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
sorry.
Yeah, she's doing something else, so I appreciate you recognizing me. I appreciate you coming and appreciate you sharing with us. When you leave here today, Mr. Chadwick, you're gonna probably have a lot of people excited that they may be getting broadband in their neighborhood. And I want to make sure that that's going to happen, because I'm going to start spreading the word that we're going to get broadband in some of our communities. Now, I say that to say this. I've been told by staff, and I may not been hearing them correctly, but the gentleman earlier said that you have competitive bids right now.
Correct.
And Beaufort County submitted several applications with our provider, and none of them was awarded. And we kind of sit back and say, why not? If we are not being awarded because the perception is that Beaufort is a wealthy county, there are some pockets in Beaufort that are not wealthy at all. And I think that's what Mr. McEllen alluded to. How can we be assured, because we are ready to go. We have another item on the agenda to talk about that. We are ready to go, but we know that the amount of money that we are using is not enough. We want to make sure that we can serve all the residents of Beaufort County in the rural area as well as in the urban area. So how can you assure us that when our vendors send an application in, we can get some of that money, because we're not getting anything right now?
Well, there are a series of programs, and I'll let Cedric chime in on this because it's his department that's doing the picking, not
I know, he
not the
talked
department
about
head.
competitive bids.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
and so, you know,
We're-
if we gotta
we're going-
compete,
We're going to eventually get to every unserved and underserved home.
so
That's a
that'd be
guarantee.
6, 7 years down the road?
Not 6 to 7 years, absolutely not. Within the next 2 years, we'll have started. Cedric, do you want to weigh in on,
And you're right, we did have to hit some of the high level areas that did not have an internet service provider, some of the low income areas first. However, we're doing it, different, what we call, we map it and we invest. And so now our second round of investments is about to start right now. In fact, we've already made the internet service providers aware, and we just switched to what we call a point location. Before, we were doing census block. So now we're going to point location. So now if you're unserved, it's gonna show up as a dot on our maps. And now the internet service provider can put in new applications in their area. And, we'll probably looking to fund some of those now. But here again, we had to try to hit the worst areas, because that's what, the perception was. However, the goals is within the next 24 months or less to have some work in every part of the state. But because, there's only so many providers and so many workers, you have to map, then reinvest, and it is engineering work associated with it. You gotta have the right contracts in place. Luckily, we do have a lot of those in South Carolina, because some other states, did not prioritize, and to your point, did not prioritize the bills within a reasonable time frame. But what we said to the internet service providers, we want everything to be 24 months or less, which means the contractors will stay here and not go to another state. So it is definitely working in conjunction with our industry partners, our communities to solve the internet problems across South Carolina and bridge that gap. So we're working on it. That's what we're going to do next. And here again, we'll have that next round out by the fall. It'll be awarded, and companies will start building across the state in the areas that we didn't hit before. So you'll probably be on that next round. We're now, and then I'll say this too, we probably at least have 2 more rounds of investments of this ARPA money, which has to be all used up. And what I mean by that, given out to an internet service provider by the end of 2024. So by the end of 2024, all that money, that $400 million we got in ARPA, will be given out to an internet service provider. And then all construction has to be done by 2026.
We have providers ready to go, so help us, help you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for taking time to be here today.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Green Space Advisory Committee update by Mr. Mike McShane, and he wears several hats. He's going to give us some update on a couple of things as the chairman of the South Carolina. Go ahead and tell them your other hats you wear.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chairman. I am Mike McShane. I'm actually a resident of Charleston County. Hello, Mr. Dawson. But I do have interest lands, interest in lands throughout Beaufort County, which, as a review, I have now been the privilege of being appointed and serving as chairman of your Green Space Advisory Committee. I'm pleased today to announce that your own colleague, Chairman Howard, has now been elected vice chairman of the Green Space Committee. You have fully seated your 4 residents based on your geographic division of east, north, south, and west. And of course, Senator Davis represents the county delegation on the committee. The committee has met, and today is simply to give a quick update on where we are. The committee is now fully established, it has met. We're working on the due diligence of the program, working in crafting the application scoring process in concert with your staff. It includes the construction of these application scoring mechanizations, and scheduling. We want to make sure that scheduling maximizes the opportunity for leveraging. So in a hat that I also wear as chairman of the State Conservation Bank, I want to make sure that we're able to utilize the fact that those schedules could overlap and work together. Quite often, opportunities are that we could take the revenue that's generated by what the county voters have put in place and leverage that on a much higher scale for the residents on that. Unlike the state bank, though, you allow not only fee simple acquisition and for conservation easement acquisition, you allow an existing PDs the ability to buy down density, as well as, for compelling reasons, work on lands outside your county and your neighboring county. Those are both very unique aspects to your program. We want to be very careful that we make sure that that's effective, any recommendation we bring to you. In the ordinance now, it talks about equal distribution through the county. We'll come back with a recommendation that I think, and the state recognizes the state law, that this needs to be addressed. Equal distribution does not necessarily mean equitable distribution. And that there are pressures and values throughout the county that are not equal, and so that we're gonna come back with recommendations for council to adopt that may require an adjustment and amendment slightly in the ordinance. We have a number of meetings scheduled now. We meet at the end of the month and twice in July with the goal of bringing a full recommendation back to this council by the end of the summer. We know we're eager to get the program off. If there are any questions, Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions?
I appreciate
Yes,
the fact
Ms.
that council members have been participating in our meetings.
Ms. Tabernet?
I don't have a question since I've been sitting in on the meetings. I just want to tell the rest of council, they picked a great chair, Mike McShane. I've never met him before. And I was on the interview team, so he kind of blew me away. He's great. Alice as the vice chair. But one of the things I did say to the committee, and I know you're going to embrace, is we have to educate the public what the money can be used for, especially when you talk about buying down density and when you talk about touching neighboring counties. I don't know that Beaufort County residents are going to understand that. They're putting the penny tax in, and then we're going to possibly get something from Colleton or Jasper County. So the education piece to me is very important. They'll have to do a roadshow.
Yes, ma'am. And that was identified very early on by the committee, that we want to make sure, because you're actually the first county to take advantage of this state ordinance, this statute. And so we have the extra burden of showing the other 45 counties really how to do it right. And frankly, that's the history of Beaufort County. You've done this always first. You were first with the Rural and Critical Lands Program, and you were first with actually with a land trust. And so you have this history that I'm confident that we'll continue to do, taking those comments in, Madam, to heart, that we'll do.
May I?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to just take a moment and offer my congratulations on behalf of this body to the chairman and to the vice chairman, and tell you that you're operating with our full confidence, and we expect remarkable results in the future, because this community has made quite an investment with the penny sales tax to raise $100 million to fund this program, and we're all very excited about it, and particularly happy that both you and Alice are leading the charge here. So congratulations, Mike, and congratulations,
Thank
Alice.
you.
I thank you for your confidence. I look forward to bringing back full recommendations to be adopted, and then exciting projects to bring forward to this council as well. If I may, Madam Chairman, just to also add my thanks to your staff, both in the planning department as well as on county legal staff to help the advisory committee, and I look forward to having them continue to be engaged in our work as we develop that
Yes, sir.
program. And lastly, if I may, just in my role as chairman of the Conservation Bank, I'm excited about what is Project 19 on your program today. This will be the first county park in the Ace Basin with full public access to be developed. I'd ask that the county residents allow the staff to work through how to open that up. But this will become a unique gem in that part of northern Beaufort County of over 500 acres that gives great diversity in terms of use, both from those who are interested in fishing, anglers, to those who are interested in other land use there. And this will, again, will be the first county park in the East Basin. And I think it's highly accessible, and this will be a great success story to do that. It showed a balance of using conservation easements to protect the land around it, so the county's investment is protected, as well as balancing then the public access and therefore the public benefit on that. And so I commend the council, the committee and the council for moving forward on that. And lastly, if I may, Madam Chairman, is I've offered to your administrator, in my former role as chairman of DNR, I was exposed to a number of different programs for county parks, including the one that I see on your agenda under line item number 12, which is Camp St. Mary's. I think there's some federal programs today under the Great American Outdoors Act that would be qualified to bring some additional dollars for infrastructure improvements to that. And also there's some water rec and boater access funds that I believe I can help identify to bring that, so that every dollar that can bring in certainly would be an enhancement to what the county puts into something I know has been important to this council for some time to get developed.
Thank you we want to leverage our money the best way we can, and we appreciate all of your help in getting that done.
Madam
Any
Chairman?
questions?
No
Yes, sir.
question. Just want to say thank you, Mr. McShane, for wanting to, submitting an application. I don't know all the members on the committee that well. I know you, and I trust you.
Well, thank you, Mr. York. Well, I did not know these members, and I'm getting to know them very quickly, but I'm very confident in what the capabilities they bring to this committee. I think the interview process that was alluded to earlier did a really magnificent job, and I give great credit to those council members who participated and the staff who really helped make sure this was something that is going to work well.
Yes, sir, we appreciate it. Thank you again, Mr. McShane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, moving on to number 9. This is the approval to undertake due diligence and discussion / negotiations for the proposed fee simple purchase of real property at 2935 and 2729 Boundary Street. And Ms. Blake is going to present.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Amanda Flake, and I'm the Natural Resource Planner as well as the staff to the Rural and Critical Lands Board. This project before you today is a request for due diligence for a possible purchase in the future for fee simple. It was approved by Rural and Critical on May 11th. Y'all might be familiar with the lower Boundary Street project where the Wendy's used to be. That project was within the viewshed of the city of Beaufort's comprehensive plan. That ended up being 7 parcels total. We partnered with the city of Beaufort as well as the Open Land Trust, buying all 7 parcels for that viewshed down there. This is similar. It's just on the upper part of Boundary Street. This is also within the city of Beaufort's viewshed for this upper section of Boundary. The lot in question, or 2 lots, are the ones that have the sheds for sale, if you're familiar with that area. The Family Dollar is just up from there. And this is a 1-acre piece of property. We're just asking for due diligence money to look into this. The project is just exploratory to see if we can build out a viewshed within this area. So the request is just to move forward with due diligence to explore.
Okay. Do I hear a motion? And then we'll have discussion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion by Councilman Glover.
I'll
Second by Councilman Dawson. Okay, any discussion or questions? This is just for due diligence. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this will move forward. Thank you. Okay. Are you doing the next one too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
Just stay there.
Okay, the next one is Barrel Landing Ore. This also is a project for due diligence with possible purchase in the future of fee simple. It was approved by Rural and Critical also on May 11th. This is proactively identifying a property that is wholly surrounded by Beaufort County. If you look at the map, all in green is what we currently own as part of Barrel Landing. The piece in yellow is the only piece that is outlying, and that is the piece up for possible purchase. There are a few homes down in the back, but otherwise, it is completely surrounded by the county. It is also the main access to this property, and it is a priority parcel for staff. Again, this is due diligence just to explore, to see if it's a possibility down the road.
We have a motion to move forward with due diligence for this.
So moved.
All right.
A second.
And second by Councilman Glover. All in favor? Any discussion?
Aye.
Okay, no questions or discussion. All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right, the next item is number 11, and we had this was a request, we have a written request to our county council chairman that people be allowed to speak to number 11 at this time because of a ferry situation from Defusky. So procedurally, Ms. Brock, should we let them speak before we hear the agenda item? Or Chairman Passman?
What we'll do is we'll take a motion and second, we'll have some discussion on it, and if there is required input from the Defusky residents, we'll have them speak.
Okay, so we're gonna first address number 11 and then we'll go into that.
I'll make the motion for 11.
All
I'll
right,
second that.
second.
So just so everybody knows, this is a two-part motion.
Right,
Okay, Defusky's one part and the other's the fire station.
right.
All right, let's talk about the fire station first.
Well, I'll be happy to speak about it.
Okay,
I've spoke about it before. The chief of the Bluffton Township Fire Department came to Sun City and showed that the response times were inadequate to service residents. And so he proposed that they work with the board of directors, and we have signed over the piece of land. Eric and the staff have taken care of that. So this ordinance would be to appropriate money for the design, engineering, construction, and the equipment for that station. And if I could snap my fingers and get it tomorrow, that'd be great, but obviously that's not gonna happen. But this is well needed, as documented by Chief Thompson and Chief Boulware at this time.
okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Greenwood?
this really doesn't have anything materially affect the fire station construction or the ferry service. These are just appropriations that we all need
Correct.
you to approve as a part of the budget. We felt it would be cleaner to do it separately. You all voted to do that at your last council meeting, so we're just making the recommendation process here to get this new process started. So this will allocate money for the fire station, appropriate money for the fire station, and appropriate money that we feel is necessary to continue on with the ferry litigation that we're in right
So
now.
we do not need to make two different votes, we'll just,
That's
Make one
okay.
vote,
And you
yes.
wanna, do you
This
wanna
will-
discuss?
This one item covers
It's one
Both.
all the
I got it.
appropriations that are necessary.
Okay, and do you wanna discuss the Defusky Island Ferry Service?
There's no public comment needed because again, this is just to appropriate money for us to continue what council is aware that we're already doing with the ferry service anyway.
We had 3 people that came over to make comment.
Yeah. And if y'all want to take comment, that's fine. I just wanted you all to be
That's what
aware
it said,
of
number 11.
the
Correct.
reason is. I thought they would probably be here for the item, for the short-term
the
rental
short-term
item
rentals.
on the county
So
council.
at this time, we're only gonna take comments regarding the ferry,
Okay.
okay? We had 3 people on this note, Kay Yarborough, Deborah Smith, and John Schwartz.
Ma'am, that was for the full council meeting.
Okay, all right. We won't have to wait. Okay, thank you. All right, so we've had discussion. Do I have a motion regarding number 11?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Yeah, it's on the table.
on the table.
It's already on the
It was
table. I
motioned
made the
and
motion.
seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I apologize for the confusion about that. Number 12, moving on. This is recommend approval of an ordinance authorizing the county administrator to execute the necessary documents for the sale of real property with TMS number R600-009-000-0003-0000, also known as Camp St. Mary's, to the Beaufort County Rural and Critical Lands Program. And Mr. Atkinson will be presenting.
I am. Good afternoon. So as already stated, this involves the property the county owns at Camp St. Mary's. For those who are not familiar with this property, it's 8 acres. It sits on a high bluff, deep water property. It's right off of Camp St. Mary's Road, which is about 3 miles south of the Lemon Island Bridge on the left side of Highway 170. Beaufort County originally purchased this property in 1997. This was prior to the existence of the Rural and Critical Lands Program as we know it today. The county purchased the property for $500,000. We've spent a lot of money and effort maintaining that property. There are some buildings out there that are dilapidated. We have been tarping roofs, boarding up broken windows. We put a fence around the property, and it's as time goes by, it's sort of reached critical mass. We need to collectively do something with this property. Over that 26 years that we've held it in the general inventory, that was originally purchased with just general fund monies. The taxpayers of Beaufort County have benefited from the property value going up, and in April, we had an updated appraisal done, and it showed the property being worth $2 million. So staff is proposing that this property be sold to the Rural and Critical Lands Program. I want to point out that there are no deed restrictions, there are no limitations. The property is not protected. It's just held in the county's general inventory of properties. And our proposal is to sell it to Rural and Critical for $2 million, conserve the property, and reinvest that $2 million back into that property by developing it into a passive park. We do not have a design yet. There have been a number of designs thrown around over the last 15 or so years. Staff views this as a fresh start. We would like to start over with this money, do a complete design. If you think in terms of Whitehall, which I think is something we're all very proud of, that's what staff would like to see happen at Camp St. Mary's. So that's the proposal. This proposal was put in front of the Rural and Critical Lands Board last week. Very good discussion came out of that, and ultimately they voted, not unanimously, but they voted to disapprove the proposal. However, I think the context of that vote is very important, and I'd like to do my best. I know Councilmember Howard and Councilmember Glover were there, so if my perception of the conversation is in error, please let me know that. But the conversation was very broad. The individual members, their opinions, they sort of ranged from a complete support of what we're trying to do to one of the board members suggesting that perhaps we sell that property on the open market to a developer, let it be developed, and that was that one person's opinion. And there were multiple other conversations that took place within that board meeting. The vote primarily, based on my view of the discussion, came down to the scoring sheet, and in particular, two parts of the scoring sheet. One aspect of the scoring sheet is the development pressure that is on the property. That portion scored very low because the county owns the property. And it was apparent to me that because the county already owned the property, that the assumption was made that it was protected. That conversation sort of developed, and I don't know that there was a resolution one way or another, but that conversation was had. The second one was the value of the property. That section scored very low on the scoring sheet, again, because the county already owns the property. After going through that, it went to the vote, and they have recommended disapproval. Based on my perception, it was for those two primary reasons. So with that, staff thinks this is a wonderful opportunity. It would be a huge benefit to the citizens of Beaufort County. We can capitalize on money that we already have, and we can reinvest it in that property and turn it into something that everyone can use and be proud of. So I will answer any questions that you have.
Okay,
Mr.
open
Chairman,
up.
I have a
Yes,
question. I went out to Camp St. Mary's my first day on the job here. We went out on a field trip, some of us did. And I thought it was absolutely gorgeous piece of property. And my first thought was, if we could take that property and put like little cabins on it like Edisto Island has, and rent them out, is that what you mean by passive park? I guess that's my question.
No,
What do you
ma'am.
mean by passive park?
Yeah, so The model for our passive park is that we have an improved access, gated access. Our passive parks are only open during daylight hours.
Oh, okay.
We fence the properties off, we protect them, and then we put bathrooms, walking trails, improved parking areas, and perhaps an area next to the bathroom that would permit picnic tables under a covered pavilion, something like that. But there would be no active programming that takes place there. It's very similar to Widgeon Point, very similar to, which is a beautiful piece
Yeah,
of property. It's wonderful.
I know where it is, but I don't know.
And it would be very similar to what we have done at Whitehall, where you park, there's a restroom, water fountain, covered area with picnic tables, perhaps walking, improved walking trails around the property. There is a dock there. We would provide access to the dock, but outside of that, that's it.
Could you fish and crab there off the dock?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Councilman Glover.
I was at the meeting, so I heard the discussion, and I feel at this time that we have a body that said no, and you're bringing it to council, and I want to basically say yes to you, but my problem is that we're taking money away from the Rural and Critical Land Program right now, and they're very limited resource at this time with the Rural and Critical Land Program. So we're taking that $2 million from that program. It becomes a passive park. This county, let me ask you this question here for me. Piggybacking on what Mrs. Brown just asked, if cabins, et cetera, are placed there as a cabin site that could be utilized by, say, youth groups, et cetera, Girl Scout, Boy Scouts, camping, that sort of stuff, is that a active park or is that a passive park?
That would be an active park.
That'd be an active park.
Yes, sir.
Active park, okay.
And we don't have anything like that in this county, huh? So have y'all thought about that being an active park like that? Not the baseball fields, et cetera, you know, just cabins so folks can, you know, get out there and camp out, and have the kayaking and everything else, the fishing with some groups and stuff like that. I know the liability is great and that sort of stuff, but I'm just asking a question.
Yes, sir, and I can answer that. Over the years, there have been a number of options proposed for this property. And there have been a number of situations. I know 2019, a former council member went out, staff met with the folks who live out there, getting their input. And they were pretty adamant in that area that they did not want the traffic associated with an active use. The sheriff, it was proposed at one time, the sheriff used it. We put a plan together for perhaps a splash pad or something in that area. Then we looked at other active uses. And we've been working on that for 26 years, and there has been no consensus on active use because of how you get to it, and because it is at the back of a residential neighborhood, in essence. So we have looked into active uses, and there's been no support in that area for that type of use. So,
And you,
I hope that
see,
answers
that's where I kind of differ with you in that if I saw campsites, et cetera, I really don't perceive that as being that active. It's just Cub Scouts coming out there, leasing it from or renting it from the county to do their powwow and leaving. I'm just wondering whether if that proposal is thrown before that community, would they embrace that? Active, when I thought about it, I'm thinking about baseball fields, soccer fields, et cetera. That's what I perceive as being active, that's all.
sure.
Thank you.
Now, yes, sir, and I will say this as a follow-up. We do have Widgeon Point, which has a barn, and we do rent that barn out. Now, something that we can do, I'm not going to speak for Stephanie, who is our passive parks manager, because I would get in trouble, but she does a great job, and she has a very detailed plan that she's worked very hard on. But what we could do is look at using different passive parks for perhaps that type of use. I know that we have allowed filming companies to come out, film documentaries, different things like that, on certain pieces of property as long as it's coordinated with staff. So I don't want to just come across to say, no, that's not a possibility, because if that's the will of council, it could be a possibility. But I don't think it has to be an all-in, full, non-passive use to perhaps accomplish that goal. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, and I'd say that to say that it'll be something different than we currently have at this time, and we could offer to our community and the broader community. At the same time, Chairman is talking about place where folks can go and play and have a quality of life. That'd be another avenue for quality of life improvement and stuff. Especially when we talking about bringing on Cotton Hall in that type of venue as well. So it makes Beaufort a destination point that people can actually come and have fun and enjoy themselves at the same time.
Yes, sir.
But that's
I recall they used to have the Boy Scout Jamboree out there on that property, I'm pretty sure a long time ago. And there is a lack of primitive camping for Girl and Boy Scouts and other youth groups in the county. I think Hunting Island may be one of the few places they allow it. So I'm kind of, just to make a comment on Councilman Glover's comment, that I don't know how we need to make a motion that those things also be included, but I would like, you know, not to just be totally no use of it. Any thoughts on, we need a motion to go forward to full council, correct, on this?
Yeah, the whole idea is to properly obtain the park as a passive park. The citizens of Beaufort County voted a bond referendum. We're going to be using some of that proceeds now to reinvest that money into a piece of property that is going to benefit the citizens of Beaufort County. I think that's what we're voting on. How we create the passive park is secondary to what we're doing now.
Well, I disagree with you, Mr. Chairman. The reason I'm disagreeing with you is that I'm not too clear whether campsite will be passive or campsite could be active. That's my only dilemma in this right now.
So I am going to get Stephanie to come up. She is the authority on passive parks and their uses and the bond referendum, so I will yield the mic to you, ma'am.
And Councilman Tabernick, did you have a question regarding that? or-
Well, Mr. Glover noted that there's limited funds in rural and critical land, so I'd like to know what's the available funds in that fund? How much money's left in rural and critical lands?
I can answer that and those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Nadgett, Passive Parks Manager, Mr. Chairman. So the typical process for creating a passive park includes public survey and then creating a conceptual plan and getting that, you know, kind of blessed by the public before then bringing it to, through our county's approval process through the staff review team. So as far as camping, that is actually it's one of the items that is included in the definition of passive recreation.
Oh.
And one of the properties that I do have a conceptual plan for in New Riverside does actually have a campground. That property is kind of years out for various reasons. So camping could be something, but typically what I do is I send out a survey online and then to interested folks, and I list all the items that are in passive recreation and ask them to rank their top, like rank them in order. Camping has not come up as a high priority in past surveys, but it's definitely something that I would put on the survey. It could be done, but due to the neighboring and adjacent homeowners, it's something that if that comes up as a priority item, it would have to be regulated very well so that we don't cause an inadvertent hazard.
Sure.
And then as far as the funding for rural and critical, we just went through last week. I took what's in our system, Munis, as of June 2nd was the date that I looked at it. And I took what was there and then subtracted all of our upcoming projects. And if all of those projects, which did include the 2 million for Camp St. Mary's, were all approved and went forward with those prices, it would expend the funds. So it's approximately $14.5 million.
So we'd be at zero with Camp St. Mary's.
Well,
actually
it's one of 12 projects
Yeah.
that if all of them were approved at that amount, it would expend those funds. And I don't really want to go too much more into detail because there's some that are in the works that have not come forward yet.
Okay. Any other questions before we have a motion or comments? I don't recall anyone making a motion, no. We need a motion. We don't need a motion? We need a motion. But no one has made one. All right. I'd like to entertain a motion to move
I
this.
will make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, second was by Councilman Dawson. Discussion, I would like to make one comment. Several of the people at Rural and Critical Lands Board meeting had questions about public input about this because it was 2019 that we had a large meeting. But from hearing Ms. Agad talk, I think we would get the public input during conceptual, and there may be other funds that could supplement this. It might not be 2 million, but at least we can go forward. That's my only comment. Any other discussion, comments?
Just one additional thing for council's knowledge, you all will have to have a public hearing on this at the passage of the ordinance
Yes.
to do the purchase. So
Okay, so there's
there will
more
be an
chances for
opportunity for
public-
public comment that time.
And Madam Chair, didn't I hear Mike McShane say there was a possibility for
Yes.
federal funds?
Yes,
Yes.
and that will be a very good way to leverage money for this park. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No?
Thank you.
I'm supporting it.
Okay, so it passes. All right. All right, moving on. We are at number 12.
13.
13, I'm sorry. Recommend approval of an ordinance for a zoning map amendment rezoning request for 21 acres, R100-025-000-068A, 0000, and R100-025-000, 068B, 0000, and R100-025-000-068, located at Laurel Bay Road and Rosita Road, extension from T2 rural to industrial. And who's presenting? Okay?
Well, Kristen's going to present. I just want to introduce her to everybody. This is going to be her first time presenting in front of you. She's new. She's our long-term planner, and she presented this to the Planning Commission, so we're going to give her a shot with you.
Kristen, will say your last name
Forbes. Oh, I'll let her.
for the record.
Hi, it's Kristen Forbes. So this one that's in front of you, the applicant is requesting to rezone 3 parcels. The 21 acres are currently undeveloped and in proximity to single-family detached residences. The future land use is neighborhood mixed use, which is moderate density residential as the primary use with some supporting neighborhood retail establishments. New development is encouraged to be pedestrian friendly, have a mixture of housing types, and a mix of land uses along with interconnected streets. Although light industrial use is one of those deemed appropriate for the parcels within the ACUs, a zoning district that allows heavy industrial is not appropriate for these 3 parcels. The future land use map identifies the areas that are located within the ACUs where industrial would be most appropriate, and these 3 are not within that. Therefore, so staff recommends denial.
And I have a question for you. Planning Commission recommended denial.
Denial, yes.
Right. Okay, do I have a motion?
I so move, Madam Chairman, that we uphold the recommendation from staff.
And I'll second.
And a second by Councilman Dawson. Okay, any discussion? Questions? Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
This is approval of the ordinance.
Yeah.
And you're recommending denial.
Recommended
Right.
Now I'm
denial.
recommending staff.
Staff recommend denial
recommendation,
of
which
the
is
proposed
denied.
zoning amendment.
Right,
Right.
but the way
This is
this
for
is,
approval.
right,
Right.
the way this is written, this would be for
Yeah.
approval, correct?
Sure, I can
You amend your
lean to
motion?
council, legal But all I'm doing is supporting the staff recommendation.
No, I understand that. I just want to make sure everybody was clear that if we approve this, it moves on,
See, recommend approval.
correct? Or am I reading this wrong?
It says recommend approval.
The way it is written, it is recommend approval of an ordinance. So if you vote to do that, then it would go on to council.
Correct.
So if you do not want it to be rezoned, then you don't make a motion to approve it. Somebody would need to make a motion to deny it.
So recommending approval is in contradiction to the staff recommendation.
Correct.
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 Do you want to withdraw, you want to withdraw your motion?
And a contradiction
Madam
to
Chair.
the planning
Yes.
commission's recommendation
Right.
as well.
Okay.
This is in my district, and
Okay.
as it was stated, this is basically a residential area, and it's inappropriate to put an industrial site in the midst of a residential community. And so I move
Yeah,
that
you already
we
made
deny
That's what I said.
the proposed zoning amendment to change it from T2 rural to industrial.
Okay.
I think he has to withdraw his
He has to,
motion first.
that's what we
Yes.
said.
I will do that, but
All
I
right,
thought I was
so-
saying the same thing, but I will withdraw my motion.
I think
If-
he needs to withdraw his motion,
Yeah,
correct?
will.
everybody
I
needs
will.
to withdraw their motion.
And-
We should understand,
That's what I
somebody
said.
can move and second this to move forward,
Yes,
and
sir.
council defeats it, and then it's done.
Yes, sir. Okay, all right. So,
Okay.
York, would you withdraw your motion?
Sure I did.
Okay,
I will.
then I withdraw the second.
all right, now I'll entertain a motion to,
Yes, and I'll make that motion to move it forward. I'll need a second, and then we'll vote, and if we deny it, it is then done.
it's done. Okay, we'll have a,
But Gerald made a motion.
yeah.
What was your motion?
My motion was to deny the zoning request to change it from T2 rural to industrial. That was my motion.
Okay, but you would need to amend this motion. This motion is on the table as recommend approval of an ordinance.
There's no motion, we withdrew that motion.
He withdrew it.
He,
Right?
Councilman
Am
Glover
I not
withdrew his
correct?
motion.
But
You're right, it needs to be withdrawn. It was withdrawn, so it's on the agenda as a recommendation to approve an ordinance. But the motion is to recommend denial of the rezoning request. And if that gets seconded, and if the majority vote carries, then it goes to council as a recommendation
Gotcha.
to vote down the rezoning.
Okay,
I'll
So-
second his motion.
All right,
Okay.
Councilman Tavernick, second. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay. Everyone clear on that?
Yep.
Okay. Moving on.
Okay.
Number 14, recommend approval of an ordinance for a zoning map amendment rezoning request for 500 acres. I'm not going to read all those numbers out, they're in our agenda. Located at 288 Delano Road to be removed from the cultural protection overlay boundary. All right, I hear a motion. Who's going to present?
Rob's out. so
Okay, you're it.
It's my hot seat tonight.
Go ahead.
So I think a lot's been said on the matter, so I'm not going to dive into the history. I think everybody's familiar with the situation of Pine Island and where we are today. So I'm going to get right to the recommendations that are coming to the committee. You have a recommendation from staff to deny the request, and you have a unanimous recommendation from the planning commission. You have a recommendation from staff to deny the application, and you have a recommendation unanimously from your planning commission to deny the application. A lot of this goes into, we work in planning, we work in land use policy and land use law. And a lot of it, higher. A lot of it is based in these recommendations that we bring to you. And I just want to kind of speak to this policy that has been in place since 1999. So this has been land use policy that the county has had for almost 25 years that you all have used to enforce the will of the community. In 2010, the comp plan again was adopted and reinforced this policy. In 2014, the Community Development Code was adopted carried over this policy. So every time these things happen, these land use policies kind of stand a little bit of a test. They kind of carry over. In 2021, your most recently adopted comp plan, it carried it over and had very specific language to address and reinforce the CPO and the language and the intent for what it was supposed to achieve. Most recently, as you all know, this council adopted a language of that text that was recommended by the CPO committee, which you all appointed to strengthen and keep the will of that most recently adopted comprehensive plan. So when you add all of these things up, it kind of starts telling a story. And that is the kind of history of why when you see these things in the staff report, which I'm sure you all read, that staff recommended denial and the planning commission recommended denial of the application to remove these lands from the boundary. And if anybody has any questions, and I'll just turn it over to what the difference between the text amendment was that you all had versus what a rezoning map amendment is, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Any questions from?
I have some questions. So I get it, no golf course, period, end of story, no golf course, all right? But the person that owns the property, I want to just be clear, can build 143 homes. Is that correct?
166.
166? Okay, let's just say 143, because that's what Mr. Greenway had said at one point. So he can build 143 homes, right?
Sure, so.
Yes?
If the question is there a by right ability for the land to develop as a single-family development with many homes? I don't want to put on a record the exact number, but it could be
Okay.
close to that number.
But he has by rights, which is in our United States Constitution, correct? That he can build 143 homes. No golf course, no
Well,
golf course.
I don't
But
want
he can build 100 some
pull the
homes.
Constitution into it. Our existing
Well, okay.
community
All right,
development
the Bill of
code.
Rights then.
Our community
All right,
development
Bill of
code
Rights.
has the zoning. That zoning has development standards, and those development standards would allow him to do a residential subdivision as long as he meets the requirements of the community development code that could realize a number close to a number of that.
Okay,
No,
so,
yeah.
so the answer to my question is yes, right? He can build homes. No golf course, because it was in 1999, the CPO says no golf course. We strengthened the CPO, no golf course, but he can build homes. Now, after saying all that, what is it gonna cost the county? To, another fire station out there, more police officers, EMS, some more roads?
Councilman Brown,
What
I
is that
don't
gonna-
think.
No, he can't answer that?
He's not prepared to answer that
Okay,
kind
I'm
of
sorry.
question
I
at this
I
time.
mean, I can do high-level answers, but detailed stuff like that, those are usually done through like fiscal impact analysis, where you really crunch the numbers on those things.
That's a lot of money.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, sir, Councilman Passman.
During the citizen comments, one was talking about specifically spot zoning. Can you elaborate on his contention that this is spot zoning?
Sure. So, I've listened to the conversations quite a bit as this has played out, and spot zoning, I think it's pretty clear the state does define it. It's usually when you have a parcel that gets zoned, that is something that is different from surrounding parcels for somebody to get a particular use. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but in this situation, could this be defined as spot zoning? I'd say professionally that it could.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right.
I'd just like to offer a motion.
Yes, sir, Councilman Glover.
I'm gonna try to follow Gerald's motion, which is to deny
The request for.
the request to change, rezone 502 acres that is currently under the cultural protection overlay district at 288 Delamo Road.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I think I heard Councilman Don, okay. I would recommend, any other discussion, then we'll do a roll call vote.
Just quickly, Madam Chairman, if I would, spot zoning is not the word I would use, but that's probably the right definition, moving forward. If you quote-unquote allow spot zoning to occur here today, what will stop spot zoning anywhere else on St. Helena Island with the Cultural Protection Overlay District? Which basically says that if you allow spot zoning now, you will continue to allow spot zoning because you couldn't stop it. Because you set precedent today if you vote to do that. So that's my argument moving forward.
Comment. And
Is that a comment or a question?
was that a comment or a question? Just a
That
comment?
was just a comment.
Okay.
All right, very good. And
Unless you want
do
to,
you like make a comment?
comment on
Councilman
it, Michael.
McAllen?
Before you do, this isn't directed to you, before you do a roll call vote, I would just like to seek clarification on the language of the motion so that it's clear what we are voting on.
I'll let Councilman Glover answer.
If I am the order, Madam Chairman, I am voting to deny the request to rezone 502 acres at 288 Delamo Road to be removed from cultural protection overlay boundaries.
Okay, thank you, yes.
And we have the 5 parcels listed in the, in our body.
I didn't list all of those.
No,
but
that's
yes.
fine.
Yeah, I list the address with
Yeah.
the 502 acres, yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I would just encourage you all to make your findings of fact as a part of the motion to be related to the fact that this violates the comprehensive plan. It's not in accordance with the actions of the CPO committee to strengthen the CPO and all that, to stay away from the spot zoning issue, because only a court of law can determine whether or not a zoning issue is spot zoning. So I do not want that to be the basis for your denial, if that
Mr.
makes
Chairman,
sense.
if you would allow me to amend my motion to include the language that our administrator just used, I appreciate that.
The findings of fact.
That is in conflict with the overall comprehensive
All right. And
plan.
Yeah, so that would have
Davis.
been going back to the items that I discussed during the presentation,
Mhm.
that you had all of the items that have been established land use policy in this county.
Comprehensive plan.
You had the establishment of the CPO in '99, you had the 2010 comp plan, you had the 2014 community development code, which pulled it in, you had the 2021 recently adopted comp plan, which had language speaking specifically to this. That's what led to you all appointing a CPO committee, that CPO to look at language. You all recently adopted language that strengthened it, and now here we are now. So it's a history of land use policy that tells a story. And I believe that's what Eric is referring to, I believe, in your findings.
Okay, so we have an amendment with that language.
Sure.
Second? Councilman Dawson. All right, we'll do a roll call vote at this time.
I have one more comment to make, if I could,
Yes.
Madam Chairman. You know, we've heard from a lot of special interest groups. I voted yes on this in the beginning until I received emails with a Washington DC address from special interest groups. I'm from DC, born and raised. I know how DC works. Our Congress, our U.S., members of our U.S. Congress allow special interests to knock on their door every single day, and they tell them how to vote. And that's what they do. And I feel that's what we have done here. But just to say that, we've heard from a lot of conservation groups, and this is what some other members of council have discussed. Why is the conservation groups against the golf course when the golf course they're going to preserve 250 acres of the 500? They're going to build the golf course. They're going to build like 60 homes versus 160 we just talked about. It seems like it's, and I've talked to constituents in District 5, Oldfield, Berkeley Hall, Spring Island, Kalawasi Island, and I just asked their opinion. What would you do? How would you vote? And they all said they would vote for the golf course. But I just want to bring something.
Excuse me, please, she's just making comments.
But I just want to bring something up that Mr. Chairman, Mr. Passmus District, I think he has the coolest constituents around. I really do. And Oldfield, this is what they said in Oldfield. Okay, golf courses are open space. they promote wildlife. They promote birds. We have heard from a lot of conservation groups and other private, interest groups. But houses do not. So, 100 and some houses versus, then I hear, well, he's not gonna make any money if he builds 143 homes. What part of $1 million each did you not get? Because 143 times $1 million is $143 million. You only paid $18 million for the property. So I just, I'm sorry, but I just don't get it. And everyone I've talked to, and I've talked to over 150 people, they all said the same thing.
Thank
Why
you.
not the golf course?
Thank you for your comments, Councilman
Thank you.
Brown. Okay. All right, we will do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Glover?
Yes.
Councilmember Dawson?
Yes.
Councilmember Tabernick?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
No.
Vice Chair McEllen?
Yes.
Chairman Passamet?
Yes.
Committee Chair Howard?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are on number 15, which is recommend approval of a resolution authorizing the unincorporated parts of Beaufort County to join with the town of Port Royal and the city of Beaufort to continue membership in the Low Country Area Transportation Study Metropolitan Planning Organization and to adopt the geographical boundaries. And Mr. Fralix will be presenting. Okay? You're going to give us a little reason why this is coming up to us too?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Okay.
So thank you for having me. This is a resolution to continue membership with LATS, Low Country Area Transit Study, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the region. So what this is a...
Excuse me, if anyone wants to talk, please leave the room, because it's hard to hear with other people carrying on conversations. Thank you. Go ahead.
This is as a result of the 2020 census. What took place is basically every census, the federal government reassesses the urban area designations. And throughout the entire nation, there's a makeup of urban area and non-urban area. And that's how federal highway funding is distributed from the feds to the states to the local entities. So as part of that, the threshold is 50,000 folks in a geographical area. In 2015 is when our first MPO of the area was created, and that's LATS as we know it. So that's the Bluffton, Hilton Head area and greater part of unincorporated Beaufort County. At the time, there was also a smaller urban being developed, which is northern Beaufort County, but didn't meet that threshold. As of the 2020 census, it did meet that threshold, so it's a makeup of the city of Beaufort, town of Port Royal, and partial unincorporated Beaufort County. And so basically, at that time, whenever an area reaches that threshold, they have to make a decision whether they are going to separate and make their own MPO, or if they're going to retain into if there's already existing MPO, as there is in our case. So this has been considered. DOT is the one that is facilitating this and has a due out in behalf of Federal Highway. So they have to look at all the different parts of the state. I think there's several other areas throughout the state that have to adjust their MPO boundaries based off the census, but there's only one new MPO in the state, which is this one that could be. So this map here kind of illustrates the dark blue line is our existing MPO boundary. So when LATS was created in 2015, they provided for future expansion and urbanization. So what you see in the lower part is the dark shaded area. That is the actual urbanized area per the feds. And then in the north, the northern darkened area, that is the new urbanized area. So already encapsulated in the existing boundary is the urbanized area. So when they established that in 2015, they did a good job looking at the entire region. And so there's also a distribution of funding that's part of this. The funding flows from the federal government to the state, and then the state appropriates it into the MPOs, however they choose to, with some formulas, population-based formulas. And so there's a little bit of questioning of how much funding, would this be an increase of funding if there was 2 MPOs, or what would that look like? And at the end, there's not a 100% answer. DOT doesn't have all the final population numbers to assess that and provide the final answer. But in general, there may be some preclusion for additional funding at the potential loss of the regional planning as we are planning collectively and together today. So with that, this has been discussed at the LATS meeting itself. This has been discussed, I don't think it was discussed at Soloco, but it's been discussed at other areas at Northern Regional Implementation Plan, as well as with the municipalities. And this discussion so far has been, from each of the different units, has been to remain as one, regardless what the funding is, that planning together makes more sense versus planning and opposing each other potentially, and that we would elect to stay in the boundary. The boundary would be tweaked a little bit based off some of the growth that you see here, but in all, the MPO boundary would mostly remain the same. So what you have in front of you today is a resolution providing just that. That goes through the description of the process that I outlined, as well as updated geographical boundary as delineated here. This resolution has been shared with the town of Port Royal and with City of Beaufort. So should they make the same approval, we would all read from the same resolution. So
Thank you.
with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions?
No,
from the committee?
LATS did approve this at their last meeting, so this is a recommendation.
And the Northern Regional Implementation
Yeah.
Committee did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
too.
so LATS, in your backup is a letter of support from LATS, and then Northern Regional also approved it, but there's no back.
Madam
no
Chairman,
backup.
I move that we approve item number 15 as
Okay.
presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilman Dawson, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Fralix. Okay, 16, recommend approval of a resolution authorizing the county administrator to enter into a temporary custody agreement with the town of Sullivan's Island for an ordinance delivery table to be installed and displayed at Fort Fremont Preserve. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Nagy.
Good afternoon again. So, as you just read, the Friends of Fort Fremont have approached me regarding the relocation of an underutilized artifact from the Spanish-American War at a fort that is owned by the town of Sullivan's Island on Sullivan's Island. It is the same Spanish-American War era fort that we also have at Fort Fremont Preserve. It is essentially the fort, our fort has a concrete table, and on that table was this piece of ironwork. And what happened was, on the inside of the fort, there was an elevator that brought up the ordnance or bullet for the gun, and then it was rolled onto this table, which was then rolled on a cart and then delivered to the gun in the battery. So the Friends would like to add this as an amenity for interpretation to Fort Fremont. They have pledged their support for funding the removal, transport, cleaning, installation, and interpretation costs of, that's a picture of the item there, moving this piece of ironwork from the town of Sullivan's Island to our property on Fort Fremont. We do have confirmation from the town manager, Mr. Benke, that the terms and conditions that I outlined in your backup are agreed upon and are being currently formalized in a formal document between our attorneys and their attorneys. So if this is approved, then we can go ahead and move forward with that agreement, which does not cost the county any money, but the Friends are very excited for the interpretation possibilities that this can enhance on our property.
All right, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
The second?
Happy to second that.
Okay,
Madam Chairman, I would also say that didn't have a chance to, I scared her, I think, when I told her I was coming for the tour of Fort Moultrie. She thought I was coming for negotiation. I didn't know she was out there negotiating and stuff, so, but I did take the tour of the
Fort
fort and along with the residents of Fort Fremont, the Friends of Fort Fremont, and they are very eager for this to take place.
okay.
Where is Fort Fremont?
St.
Oh,
Helens.
on St. Helena Island.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so
I've
without
been out there
objection,
twice.
without objection, we will go forward with this. Yeah. All right, number 17, recommend approval of the resolution authorizing county administrator to enter into a MOU with the Beaufort County Open Land Trust for maintenance of county-owned property known as Blocker Field Extension. Are you doing this one too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Beaufort County purchased the Blocker Field extension on May 30th. So we just closed on it, and part of the negotiations of this acquisition, this rural and critical lands acquisition, was that the Open Land Trust would then maintain it, as they do a very nearly adjacent property that is currently known as Blocker Field, which is also adjacent to the Low Country Cider Company on St. Helena. So the Open Land Trust owns the Low Country Cider Company and Blocker Field. We will now own what we're calling Blocker Field Extension, and then they've agreed to the terms to essentially annual mowing and vegetation management to maintain the view corridor along Highway 21.
Do I have a motion, Councilman Glover?
So, yes, ma'am, I so do move, Madam
I
Chairman.
second.
All right, Ms. Tavernick, second. Without objection, this will go forward. Okay.
Thank you.
Number 18, recommend approval of a resolution to authorize the county administrator to initiate the BE-CAT 3 grant program to assist with broadband efforts in Beaufort County. Hi,
Hey.
Mr. Patrick.
Good afternoon. I'm here to share with you our next step in our mission to bring high-speed internet to rural parts of Beaufort County, a mission which we started back in 2020. We analyzed data from a bunch of different sources, including the data from the state, and we created 3 different categories of underserved areas in Beaufort. Category 1 were areas where there's no existing broadband infrastructure. Category 2 were areas where there were unserved pockets where the population or residential density was a restriction. And then category 3, which is what we're talking about today, are areas where there are residences down long driveways or private roads where cost of extending broadband service to the home is a barrier for that internet service. And so to say that again in a different way, the cost of bringing broadband to the home is more than what the provider has allotted. And typically when that occurs, the provider charges or expects the resident to pay the construction cost of the service drop. So what we did was we decided to develop a grant program using ARPA, SLFRF funds to assist homeowners that are in that category 3 with receiving broadband internet by funding 90% of the cost of that service drop. Typically, the cost of a service drop, when it's rolled over to the residents or the homeowner, is typically more than what they can afford. So we developed this program, and we feel like it will provide access to broadband in those served areas that we haven't before. To be eligible for this program, the residents must not have any existing broadband service from any of the providers in the county. The broadband provider must have a primary network that runs along the primary road, which connects the driveway or the private road. And the provider has to confirm that there is an actual construction barrier that's preventing access to that home. And they must be willing to work with us on this process.
Hear a motion?
I guess.
All right, Councilman Dawson, a second?
I
And then we
second
can ask
it.
questions.
If you made a motion or you
I
asking
was
questions?
asking for the motion, then we can have
Oh.
questions.
I'm not motioning.
Okay.
No motion? Okay. I'm a motion that we move forward. I'd like to speak to the motion after.
Okay, I need a second. All right, Councilman Ellen. Okay, questions, discussion?
We talked about broadband, and many of the new council members probably don't know that Mike Covert came on the same time I did in 2017, and Mike chaired a committee called the Transparency Committee, and this county made a goal to connect every resident of this county to a network so that we can communicate. And it became clear that in rural areas like Gerald's, Mr. Dawson in my district, a lot of area pockets were not connected to any kind of internet connection. And so they, at that time, it cost a lot of money to do that. There's been a lot of effort in my community to bring broadband. Cables are being laid, but the lateral areas are not connected. And I see this as a start in that direction. The only thing I would just caution this council on is that when we first started talking about this, and we were trying to allocate funds for this out of the opera funds, we had kind of put aside $2 million toward this effort, if I remember right. It may have been more, but I just remember $2 million. And because of the infrastructure bill that came out, we sort of reduced it, figuring that we would get money from the state and the federal government to help support this. All I want to do right now is say, yes, let's move forward, let's get it started, but recognize that it may cost us more. And if we haven't used all of that opera funds to make sure that we have those funds kind of tabled so that we can at least get further down the road, it is definitely needed. So that's my comment. Thank you.
I apologize, Councilman Dawson. I should have called on you first.
That's all right, no problem. Patrick, as I read the narrative for this program, this grant program, I see where we cover a lot of territories throughout the county. However, I don't see anything that actually addresses the need for the extension of broadband into the upper part of the county. Particularly the Big State community, the Jenkins community, and the Sheldon community. I don't see anything listed. I see lists going as far as the Seabrook, which is on this side of the Whale Branch River. Mm-hmm. But the communities on the other side of the Whale Branch River, which is the far northern part of my district and the county, I don't see anything listed to address the need in those areas.
We still have funds coming from the BEAD program, which the gentleman spoke of earlier today. So that might help with some of those pocket areas. This particular grant program that we just came up with was using the remaining ARPA funds that we have allocated for broadband. But really, we looked at how this came from your area, from Horace Dawson Lane. I think you remember that, where the gentleman couldn't get broadband internet because it cost too much to construct. And so we were able to help him out. So we said, hey, when we talked to the providers and gave them that scenario, they said there are areas in Beaufort where that occurs. And so we came up with this program to address those needs. We continue to push for broadband expansion in other areas, again, with the state, writing letters, talking to the providers, and trying to get that done. I don't know if we have enough ARPA funds to take care of the issues that you're speaking of, but we can help folks that are on these private roads or long driveways that can't get broadband.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Cabernet.
Okay, I have a couple questions. First of all, for the audience and people listening, again, and I'm sorry I didn't harass Jared about it, tell them what ARPA SLFRF means, because that's not language people speak.
Go ahead, Jared. State, local, federal recovery.
And please do quickly, we're running out of time. Yeah, we're running out of time, so.
ARPA is American Recovery Plan Act, and SLFRF is state, local, federal recovery funds.
And Patrick, I have a question. Is there any preference given to homes that have children? This would have been great during the shutdown when kids had to do everything online, and if they don't have internet, how could they do their education? And it's still prevalent. Is there any preference given to families that have children?
No, we didn't address that. So it's a first come, first serve. So as soon, if the grant is approved, we'll put it online, fill it out, and we will get those allocated and sent to the providers so we can get a statement of work of how much it'll cost to do the construction, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, we had a motion and a second, correct? With that? All right.
Yep, we do.
With no disagreement, we'll go forward. All right. No objection, we'll go forward. Number 19, recommend approval of resolution authorizing the county administrator to execute necessary documents and provide funding for the fee simple purchase of the property known as Cotton Hall. And all of you on the committee got this map. Some of you went on a field trip to see it. And who is presenting?
I am presenting. You all have seen this a few times in the past. Wants to authorize due diligence. Many of you went out to the property a few weeks ago and toured the property. It's a key acquisition for us through the Rural and Critical Lands Program for the fact that we'll be the only county in the area that will have a public park accessible to the public in the Ace Basin. So folks will be able to enjoy the Ace Basin without the need for a boat or being invited to private property. This was a partnership between Conservation Bank, the Open Space Institute, and the county. So I'm going to ask Mr. McShane to come up and briefly say a few words about that partnership and what he was able to do to make this happen. He played a key role in making this acquisition happen for the county. So
Thank you.
Turn it over to him.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Madam Chairman, just very quickly, this is just a great illustration of where opportunity was presented. We were able to utilize one of our nonprofit qualified partners to move quickly, and then to allow state and county to do their due diligence and then be able to take this out. Otherwise, we would have lost out on this opportunity. And I think this is just illustrative of great collaboration. It was very clear by this council, members of this council, and the administration, about how important it was for a public access project in the Ace Basin. And I think what we found will become a real gem for the public in that area. So I'm delighted to work with that and continue to do this.
Councilman Dawson, this is in your district and you were on the field trip. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, the only comment I want to make is a motion for approval.
Okay, please do. All right, we have a motion. Second?
Another motion.
I'll second
All
it.
right, second by Ms. Tabernack.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Where's the money coming from to pay for the 4.5 million? Is that coming out of the green space?
No, ma'am. Rural and critical.
Rural and Critical Lands. Rural and Critical Lands.
And also the state. The state
And
is
the
putting.
state.
Oh, the
putting money-
state's giving some money too?
Yes.
Yes.
Like how much? Can we say?
3.
Oh, all right.
Yes. Ms. Flake, Amanda, tell us the money.
It would be 4.5 million from Rural and Critical. The Conservation Bank has already done 1.5 million, but from Rural and Critical, it would be 4.5 million for both parcels, which would be 527 acres total.
Thank you.
All right.
And this will give public access without a boat for fishing, which is great. It's
Correct.
fantastic.
Correct.
Active or passive, York? Active or passive?
This is
This
actually
is passive.
passive,
Yes.
but
Passive, right?
Okay.
Passively active.
believe it or
Passive
not, there is the thought of a horse trail on this site.
Oh, yeah.
There's all kinds of possibilities. We need a motion to go into executive session.
Was this approved?
I think,
What?
did we vote?
We didn't vote to approve
Oh,
this.
okay, we didn't vote?
Yeah.
Without exception?
Yes.
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 Yes,
Okay.
okay.
Let's vote.
All right.
Thanks, Amanda.
Since the state's is gonna put in some money.
My county council chairman is saying, hurry up, so I'm trying to.
Yes.
All right, we need a motion to go into executive
So
session.
moved.
I have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Yeah, you
Yes.
gotta tell them.
As stated,
Okay.
to talk about proposed sale of land.
Your second to go into executive
I'll
session?
second it.
All right, Ms. Tabernet, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. There may or may not be anything out of executive session. Okay, we will not need a vote, so, the next meeting is at 5 o'clock, county council.
So we can
Thank you.
adjourn? No, we can't adjourn.
We are adjourned. Well, we're not adjourned,
Yeah,
but
we're
we're
gonna recess and then come back out.
Yeah.
Pine Hall is probably the one I know.
We, We are in recess.
Then you have to come out to. Well, no, we're not buying, we're only buying some land there, we're not buying Cotton Hall itself.
We're buying,
Yeah, Cotton Hall.
the other ones, this one and that.
We are back in session. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
A motion we adjourn?
We make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All right. Community Services Committee is adjourned.
Adjourn, okay.
Karen, tell us.
Okay. I'll come down.
Okay.